The church bell is ringing, accompanied by the sound of high heels stepping on the floor. The bride is walking toward the church altar, where the priest calls her name, Edith. The groom is already waiting there. With such a solemn setting, I know this is a perfect wedding and one that the Duke's family has poured their heart into. This girl is incredibly nervous, trying to calm herself down, thinking there is no need to worry. But she can still see the hatred, disdain, and contempt in the eyes of the guests, or the indecent gazes filled with lust. This wedding did not arise from true love, no matter how many times she closes her eyes and imagines that happy scenario. The priest brings the divine blessings for both of them. Meanwhile, she feels that the blessing is not really right, because to build a happy home, nothing the priest mentioned will become reality. Today is the day she marries a man she hates to the core. Misfortune keeps haunting her, just as it did in her previous life. In her previous life, she had an older brother who always came to demand money from her for gambling. She vividly remembers that day when she refused to lend him money because he owed her so much already and had not repaid her. They had a huge argument. At that moment, he kept pressing close to her, and beneath her was a staircase. Suddenly, he reached out and pushed her. She fell. Her final sensation in her previous life was that she was floating in midair. But what was even worse was that she became someone else. The first time she saw her reflection in the mirror, she was deeply puzzled, wondering who this person was and why she had such a face. She knelt before the mirror, panicking when she realized she had been reincarnated, a common trope in online novels. At that moment, a black-haired maid entered and called her Lady Edith. The maid reminded her of the important event happening today. She did not care about that. All she knew was that the name of this body was Edith. She had read a romance novel titled Escaping from Possession all night. The protagonist is a pure, innocent, beautiful girl like the goddess of spring, the illegitimate daughter of Count Zither. Because of her low status, she was mistreated by her family and had an unhappy childhood. Later, she caught the attention of the Duchess and Duke of Rutwig and was adopted as a true lady of the family. And she met them, the main characters around the story. The two brothers had somehow become rivals in the race to win Zither's heart. That is why the word possession was used in the title. But more importantly, she had become a greedy and foolish villain, blinded by love. Edith continuously targeted the protagonist to cause trouble, like sending sewing needles in gift boxes to the heroine. She was a villain who never stopped highlighting Zither's virtues. A true villainess, blinded by jealousy, always wanting to kill the heroine while squandering her noble parents' wealth. Returning to reality, the maid helped her with her makeup and hair. Under the maid Anna's makeup, Edith became incredibly beautiful. The maid reminded her to quickly go to her father. She cheerfully thanked the maid. This made Anna unable to believe her ears. As she ran, she thought her current mission was to correct the villain's mistakes. Since she remembered the entire plot, it should not be too difficult. She thought that this place was much better than her previous life. At least here, she could receive the boundless love of her family. She rushed toward the door to the room where her father was. She opened the door and cheerfully called out to her father. But suddenly, she realized that perhaps her imagination had shattered into pieces. The man she called father looked at her with displeasure because she had arrived later than he had expected. He set down the wine glass in his hand and scolded her for being sluggish. As she was breaking apart inside, he urged her to quickly close the door. Suddenly, at this moment, a voice echoed in her mind. Edith's 13th life activated. Identification successful. Memory upload complete. She began to panic at the voice in her head. She fell into a blank space. The memories of this body flooded into her mind. From a third-person perspective, she saw Edith kneeling before her father and brother, repeatedly admitting her wrongdoings. She felt overwhelmed by this sight. The novel never wrote about Edith's family. It turned out that Edith had grown into a cruel and ruthless villainess because she had the background of a villain. As a child, she was always locked in a dark room, constantly screaming just to be released and endlessly apologizing. When she grew up, her brother always told her that she had to repay those who had raised her. She always appeared glamorous in extravagant dresses and jewelry, but was a victim of family abuse and was treated harshly by the servants. She was like the most precious doll of Count Rahab. She was constantly tormented and beaten cruelly. Edith and her soul met in this realm of memories. Edith asked her if she could change everything, which frightened her. In truth, after understanding the situation, she was not sure if she could do it. A scream of the name Edith Rahab echoed during their meeting. Her father slammed the table and said she had been too distracted today, which scared her. He gritted his teeth and told her not to make any mistakes on today's trip to the house of Ruthwick. She dejectedly walked out of the room. She did not understand why, whether in her old life or new life, she never had a real family. Suddenly, she stopped to recall the contents of the script. The Duke Ruthwick and Count Rahab had been at odds since she was very young. At that time, the prestige of the two families was almost equal. Lord Ruthwick had become a duke after achieving great merit following the war. However, her father, Count Rahab, always believed that the position of duke had been stolen from him by the Ruthwick family. Therefore, he forced her to marry in order to gather more information to bring down the duke. She tried to console herself that it would be okay. She would turn it into an opportunity for herself. Perhaps her tragic fate was predetermined, so she would surely find a way to survive in this harsh life. In every reincarnation novel, there are always minor events that serve as a stepping stone for conflicts. As long as she did not behave as the original character did today, she could avoid them. She stepped down from the carriage with her father's guidance. Edith's eyes were fixed ahead. A magnificent and luxurious mansion appeared before her. Edith quietly followed her father and brother toward a palace. While Edith thought it was excessively extravagant, her father remarked that it was only showy on the outside, but inside it was rotten. The butler came out and greeted the trio with respect. He said that the Duke and Duchess were waiting for their family inside. Her father always acted loving toward her in front of others, urging her to quickly go in with them. She felt that this man was more two-faced than a flip of a pancake, his attitude completely different from at home. The main setting of the story is the mansion of Duke Ruthwick. At the lavish dining table, there were many nobles seated there. Edith entered as the servant announced her. She felt that seeing these characters she had only imagined was truly amazing. The Duke and Duchess Ruthwick entered to announce the commencement of the feast to everyone. This young man was the male lead of the novel, incredibly handsome and charming, especially with his golden eyes. His name was Clip. This girl was Zizia, the female lead of the novel. Her beauty was truly breathtaking. And the man beside her was Edith's fiancé. Looking at his appearance, she felt he was even more handsome than the male lead. Suddenly, Edith found him irresistibly attractive. He had a tall, straight nose with a chiseled jawline, a sweet beauty, and a perfectly proportioned body that seemed like it could only exist in novels. He glanced at her with deep, dark eyes, then quickly looked away as if unrelated. But why did this cursed novel make her blush with embarrassment at his handsomeness now? Edith shyly covered her face. The table was filled with numerous delicious dishes that only nobles could enjoy. She picked a plate of steak that looked appetizing and began cutting it to eat. She put the piece of meat in her mouth with eager anticipation. The meat melted in her mouth instantly, making her realize that noble food was truly delicious. As she was enjoying her meal, her father's voice rang out, signaling that the plot of the novel was about to begin. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder and told Duke Ruthwick that he would like her to have a few attendants by her side to take care of her. Duke Ruthwick and his wife were reluctant to agree with her father's suggestion, remaining silent in thought. His wife broke the silence in the room. She said that the mansion had many trustworthy servants, so there was no need to bring her own. Her father coldly looked at the Duchess and asked if she was not allowed to bring servants when she was married, right? Everyone present did not know how to react to his question. She thought that this proposal was absolutely brilliant. No one could refuse such a reasonable request, but she could. She spoke up, telling her father he did not need to worry about her. She apologized for her father's strange request, explaining that he was just overly concerned about her. On their return, her father suddenly turned into a beast, cursing her as crazy for rejecting his request and telling her not to sabotage his plans. She still gently bowed her head and questioned him. "Didn't you see the Duke's expression?" She explained to her father that if he was so blunt with his request, the Duke would become suspicious. Even if she brought attendants, they would not be of any help. Her father looked at her with a dark expression but had calmed down, asking what she could do on her own. Her brother was thinking about the female lead when she told him that she would live quietly, at first to lower their guard. Once they let their guard down, she would return home and bring attendants to accompany her there. Her father pondered her words with a cautious expression. In his ear were Edith's words, "Trust me." After resolving everything according to plan, her marriage proceeded as originally intended. Standing next to her husband, she felt happy, not because she had married a handsome man, but because she would no longer have to return to that house. The priest bestowed blessings, and when the time came for the ring ceremony, She would no longer bear the name Edith Rahab. Two angelic children approached her, carrying the wedding rings. She thought they were truly adorably cute, but her gaze was directed elsewhere. She saw Killian frowning at her impatiently from across the way. The two rings were brought before her. She wanted the ceremony to be completed quickly. She extended her hand for Killian to place the ring on her finger. He quickly put the wedding ring on her and tried not to touch her hand. She looked at the ring loosely hanging on her finger and sighed. He did not even want to touch her anymore. She reached out to put the ring on her husband's finger, only to find that he had already put it on himself. She felt awkward and frustrated that he hated her so much. She took a deep breath to hold back the anger rising in her throat. She did not even want to try to change his heart. She cheerfully patted the child who had brought the ring to her and praised them for doing a great job. She returned to her position with a calm face, and Killian seemed slightly surprised by her actions. He looked at her with an evaluating and probing gaze, not finding anything unusual, so he quickly looked away. She felt that this marriage would lead her into a new life, free from her father's and brother's beatings. When she got home, she changed into a comfortable long nightgown. But it was not very comfortable since the dress was tight and the high heels were too high, but she had to accept it because it was Edith's style. She brushed her hair in front of the mirror when she suddenly heard a knock on the door. She quickly said, "Come in." A gentle voice called her Lady Edith, which slightly surprised her. Turning around, she saw that it was Lady Zither standing there. She asked Zither, "Why are you looking for me?" She hesitated, looking at her with an innocent expression. She suddenly remembered that this event was in the novel, making her eyes widen. At that time, Zither had come to apologize to her for Killian's rude behavior. But she did not accept it and rubbed salt into Zither's wound with cruel words. Because Edith could not blame Killian, so she took her anger out on Zither, scolding her for wearing a white dress like a bride at her wedding, which frightened Zither. Thinking about it, she felt a little annoyed. The female supporting character getting angry at the female lead is like slapping herself in the face. She would not do that. Just like in the novel, Zither apologized to her for her husband's actions and explained that he was naturally cold, hoping she would not take it to heart. Zither continued to say that Killian was extremely sensitive, not as he appeared on the outside. Edith thought Zither was really beautiful when she smiled, so she could not hate her. Zither had a saintly beauty, with blonde hair, blue eyes, and boundless compassion for the villain, making her someone worth befriending. She smiled at Zither, advising her not to worry. She told her that she would not resent her husband, even if it was just on paper. Hearing this, Zither was incredibly touched, blushing. Zither looked at Edith with sparkling eyes and said that Edith was truly kind and mature. The light shining on her made her feel like she was about to go blind. She beamed brightly and complimented Zither on the dress she was wearing, saying it suited her well. Zither shyly did not understand Edith's words. Suddenly, the sound of a servant echoed, saying that the bath towel for Edith had been prepared. Zither felt embarrassed for being a bother and asked to leave. Edith smiled and waved goodbye to Zither, thinking to herself that she really wanted to pinch her cheeks. She sighed, then undressed, feeling exhausted now that the wedding was finally over. As the dress fell to the floor, she felt much lighter. She relaxed in the bathtub, feeling as if she was being reborn with the bath. She thought about her future life, which would be wonderful. No need to worry about clothing expenses, no housework, and no more facing her brother. She felt satisfied thinking about the busy days ahead, living a wealthy life. Suddenly, a cold voice interrupted her thoughts. It questioned her, saying it was heartless to take a bath without waiting for the groom to arrive. She covered her chest, looking at Killian with suspicion, wondering why he was there. Killian's face darkened as he questioned why she was surprised he had come. He was the groom, after all. She awkwardly said that she was just a little surprised by his arrival. He looked at her in the bathtub and said he was glad she realized that. Looking at him, she said she knew ever since the ring exchange. He had not touched her hand once. If she clung to him, it would be wrong. Suddenly, he leaned over, gazing at her, asking if she wanted to play the role of a sweet couple with him. Looking at him, she found it ridiculous that someone so handsome could be so obnoxious. Truly, the heavens never give anyone perfection. Looking at him, she felt exhausted. She said she was just narrating what she observed. She asked if he planned to rest here tonight. She was truly surprised that he showed up here despite hating her so much. As if hitting a sore spot, he quickly turned and walked out of the room. Watching him like that, she was confused, thinking, "Why did you come here then?" Killian walked quickly ahead through the dark hallway. Someone calling his name made him stop. Zither appeared behind him, asking why he was leaving the bridal chamber. Looking at Zither, he replied that he had gone there, but it seemed Edith did not want him to stay in her room tonight. They had argued in the bathroom. Zither was shocked to hear this, thinking Edith was not that kind of person. He patted Zither's head and smiled, saying she always thought well of others. He patted Zither's head again, comforting her, and she asked him about Edith. Suddenly, he looked at Zither, asking her what Edith had said to her. Zither told him that Edith had complimented her dress, though she did not understand its meaning but felt very happy. Killian asked Zither if Edith had been angry with her at that time. Zither asked him if he was not afraid Edith would be disappointed if she overheard. He responded that she did not care about that, because during the wedding, Edith wore a revealing and gaudy dress. Yet Edith did not even care. Hearing this made Zither question him about whether he could speak of his wife in such a way. Suddenly, he said that Zither was really cruel for coming to tell him those things. This statement made Zither feel embarrassed, unsure of what to say next. Killian looked at Zither sincerely and was about to speak about his feelings today. Suddenly, the sound of someone calling Zither's name interrupted him. Clip walked up and asked what the two of them were doing here so late. Zither saw Clip arrive and happily called his name, leaving Killian behind. Killian felt deeply dissatisfied with the presence of this uninvited guest. Morning came, and Edith was slightly surprised that her body still woke up on time after an incredibly exhausting day. She thought youth was really good, having the energy of a healthy person that she had not had before. She admired this body and planned that her next step must be to become a filial daughter-in-law in her new home. Because Killian was a supporting character, he was always obsessed with the female lead, but perhaps things would be different with his mother. Previously, the two of them had warmly welcomed her, so maybe they would open their hearts to her. Thinking of this made her feel excited. She decided that she should greet the two of them first. She thought the villains in stories live long because they win the trust of the story's key characters. In this house, the voices of the Duke and his wife were more important than Killian's. She set a goal for her life to live leisurely and eat delicious food. She thought it was crucial to win the favor of the Duke and his wife right from the start. She walked over and rang the bell to summon the servant in the novel. Indeed, a servant appeared. She instructed the servant to prepare a bath for her. The servant quickly complied. She asked the servant's name and learned that her name was Anna. She wanted Anna to choose clothes for her, but quickly realized her own clothes were too gaudy and revealing. She thought of wearing the dress to meet her in-laws, and imagined they would think of her as something other than their daughter-in-law. She felt a headache from imagining that scenario. She ordered Anna to go to the sewing room to alter her clothes. Anna complied and quickly left. She felt that Anna left without a word, completely different from the servants at her own house, much more professional. She held the dress in her hand and wanted to take it for alterations all at once. Suddenly, she thought of something that made her open her eyes wide. She wondered whether she should scatter rose petals on the bed on her wedding night. But she immediately dismissed the idea because it was too messy. Killian was exactly like in the original work. He would keep his purity for Zither. She felt a bit regretful for this supporting male character, still a virgin and handsome, yet cast as a supporting role. But she suddenly thought of the bathroom incident yesterday. He came to argue with her, not to do anything else. It was really puzzling. But she felt happy to admire a handsome man for free twice like that. Anna's voice calling her echoed. She jolted at Anna's call. Her hair was already done, and the dress had been altered. She stood up, flustered by her own thoughts. She constantly reminded herself not to have feelings for Killian, that this should not happen. Edith, in a modest and elegant outfit, bowed and greeted good morning. The Duke and Duchess, seated in chairs, felt satisfied with his daughter-in-law. Her mother-in-law thanked her for the greeting, exchanged a few polite words, and then invited her to sit down. She felt they were considerate when they had prepared tea for her. Suddenly, the Duke's words interrupted her thoughts. He said, "Your status is that of an adopted child," and asked if she knew the responsibilities of a wife in a noble family. She felt fortunate to still have the memories of this body. She quickly responded that she had to manage finances and organize documents. Seeing the Duke's skeptical gaze, she added that she could follow the Duke's arrangements and would try to learn as quickly as possible. The Duke said that perhaps her father had taught her a lot, making her slightly stunned by his illogical statement. She knew they did not trust her, but if they thought she had stolen documents, it would be a huge problem. She changed her words, saying that if they felt distrustful, she could learn other things and hoped the Duke would guide her more. The Duke felt a bit embarrassed for revealing his mistrust, but he was also very pleased with her answer. The Duchess, seeing this, nudged him to remind him. The Duchess gently praised her and said she would help her for the next 2 weeks, then asked if she needed anything. She looked at her mother-in-law and then said she wanted to tour the mansion, but did not want to rely on Killian. The Duchess was about to refuse and let Killian guide her. But seeing her expression, she suddenly remembered that her son had left her alone on their wedding night. Embarrassed, she agreed to her request. She left the main hall with a tired expression after facing her husband's parents. Suddenly, a young man walked up and asked if she was okay. She shyly responded that she was just a bit nervous. Realizing the person in front of her was Viscount Zhang, she quickly asked him and hoped he could help her in the future. In the original story, Rainer was the one managing everything in the mansion when the Duke was away, trusted by the Duke like Anna, but she had too little information about him. Rainer looked at her and asked if she had difficulty getting around. He said he was very busy, urging her to hurry up. She felt embarrassed and quickly followed him. She sighed. The supporting character's personality was too arrogant. He introduced her to the jewelry room, where all the mansion's precious jewels were kept. Then came the weaponry room. All weapons were custom made by blacksmiths for the Duke's family. After that, the heart of the mansion, the library, which housed all kinds of rare books. Following him, she marveled at the large library room. It was filled with thick books. She asked if she needed permission to enter the library. He replied that she could come anytime as she was a member of the noble family. Next, Rainer led her to the exhibition area, which made her feel wonderful because in her previous life, she could not attend such events. He led her to the sit-in hall, leaving her astonished. She was amazed by the luxurious room. The two slowly stepped into the room. He suddenly stopped and told her that because the mansion was quite large, he would end the tour here today. Edith thanked him enthusiastically. She felt great living in such a beautiful place. She also politely complimented his voice. He looked at her in surprise. He did not expect her to say such nice things. He quickly lowered his eyes so it would not be noticed. But his face had already turned red from embarrassment. He said he was just doing his duty. If she agreed, he would continue the tour tomorrow. On the way back, Rainer took her past the afternoon tea hall and introduced it to her. He said this was a place to view the entire surrounding scenery. This place was frequently used by guests, and the Duke also enjoyed spending his free time here, as did other family members. At the moment, she saw Clip, Killian, and Zither sitting at the tea table. They were happily chatting and joking together. Seeing the scene, she suddenly froze for a moment. Even Rainer felt the same way. He looked over at Edith to see her reaction. She remained silent, standing there with her hand on the railing, saying nothing. Her hair covered her face, making her appear very cold. Rainer pointed toward the tea table, unexpectedly muttering the names of those at the table, while Edith found the scene too beautiful. Rainer asked in surprise why they were like this. Edith thought his surprise was justified because the newlywed groom was now flirting with another woman. Seeing the scene, she wondered what the original owner of this body would have felt. They were still happily laughing and joking, unaware of the presence of the two. Seeing her husband having fun with someone else. She did not feel it was a problem because all she wanted was to live peacefully in the mansion. As she left, she looked in their direction, thinking deeply, but her eyes seemed very sad. She smiled at Rainer and said that this place was very beautiful, especially in spring when it would be an ideal spot to enjoy the flowers and fresh air. He was surprised by her expression. She was too calm in saying that, making it seem illogical. She bid farewell to Rainer and said she would visit more often. Then she asked him to leave with her. He still did not understand why she reacted like that. Nothing had happened. Was this really her true personality? In the study room, the Duke talked about his daughter-in-law's behavior during today's walk. Rainer mentioned that she was knowledgeable about the mansion, especially the sit-in hall. The Duke asked if she had acted strangely. He replied that she had not shown any unusual behavior. In fact, she was entirely different from the rumors. Suddenly, he remembered something unusual while passing through the grand hall. Rainer told the Duke that he saw the two young masters and Lady Zither having afternoon tea together. The Duke paused with the pen in his hand. The Duke seemed displeased. He had told his children to behave more appropriately, but Killian kept engaging with another girl after the wedding. Earlier, he had explained to his son that they needed to prevent Count Rahab from collaborating with the Grand Duke and to keep him in check until the end of the year. But at that time, his son seemed indifferent and unconcerned. Yet, he reluctantly agreed but asked not to be given any more responsibilities beyond that. Putting down the quill in his hand, the Duke felt helpless about his son's stubbornness. Raynor said that Lady Edith did not seem to care about this, which surprised the Duke. Raynor told him that she was overly calm, acting as if she had not seen anything and walking away as though she had never been there. It was too strange. The Duke also thought the same, explaining that her personality was quite unpredictable. At the dining table, Anna told Edith that she came to clear the table after the meal. Edith looked at her and gently thanked her. In her previous life, she did not have much money to eat luxuriously like this, so she still was not used to it, but living like this was wonderful. She told Anna that she had been working since this morning and should go have lunch, and then return. Anna was surprised by Edith's reaction and looked at her curiously. Anna stared at her for so long that Edith felt embarrassed, unsure if she had said something wrong. Anna bowed and thanked her for her concern. Today was too exhausting. Luckily, she had managed to behave well in front of her mother-in-law. Now, she just had to settle things with Zither. Zither was the protagonist of this world, the author's favorite child. However, her life before entering the Ruthwick mansion was very unfortunate. She was tormented by her siblings because she was an illegitimate child. They treated her like an object to vent their anger and insult. Thanks to her effort in saving the Duchess, Zither successfully captured their attention. Upon learning of her situation, the Ruthwick family was outraged that the innocent and small Zither had endured violence for such a long time. They purchased her to take her away. The Sinclair family quickly severed blood ties with Zither and missed the opportunity to become in-laws with the Duke's family. This caused them much regret. Analyzing the storyline clearly shows that the female lead is luckier than anyone else, completely different from her. Regardless of who she is in her two lives, she still had to go through many ups and downs in life. At work, she was bullied and discriminated against by her colleagues despite her best efforts. After work, she sent a breakup message to her lover. After years of being together, he cheated on her behind her back. When she got home, she intended to read a few more stories to ease her mood, but who would have known that would be the end of her life? She wanted to know how her brother would react after she fell down the stairs and died. She also wanted to know if her parents would cry. But perhaps they would be more worried about her brother than her, so she should only care for herself. Besides herself, no one loved her anymore. Outside the window, she saw Zither sitting under a tree reading a book. She intended to go down to talk to her instead of staying here overthinking. Suddenly, she saw Killian. Her husband was standing with another girl, asking her what she was reading. Zither replied to him that she was reading royal history. She wanted to gain more knowledge, and did not want to become a laughingstock in the family due to her limited understanding. Killian smiled at her and said that she could do anything that made her happy, and he would try to support her as much as he could. Edith felt that was a typical line for a second male lead. If it were the male lead, he would have said, "Do not worry too much, just be yourself." He would give her everything she wanted. She knew she could not go down there to talk to Zither. Zither asked Killian about Edith. But he said he did not want to care about that woman because Edith was just a temporary hostage who would eventually leave the mansion. Standing behind the curtain, she felt that her thoughts were correct because he would say these words when she was not around. The teacup shattered, spilling tea onto the ground. A girl's hysterical screams, cursing everyone as insane. Why was it that person? She clutched her head and screamed as if she could not accept the truth. She was Layla, the youngest daughter of the Sinclair family. Suddenly the door opened, and someone asked her what had happened. She said that surely he knew this. Edith had married Killian, but her brother still appeared calm. She kept screaming at her brother, asking why it was Edith. She could not accept the truth. Her brother comforted her, saying perhaps Killian had a preference for collecting ordinary women. She angrily finished her meal with her brother, asking why he could still joke with her at this time. He asked what good would it do to throw that teacup, which silenced her. Suddenly, she called him. She asked if he knew something. Her brother remained indifferent, joking that having a temperamental little sister was exhausting. He explained to his sister, "Think with me for a moment why those two got married, and what value a marriage contract brings to both families. There is the largest iron mine in the southern region, exclusively owned by Count Rahab. He controls a large amount of raw material for weapon production." He asked his sister if she understood what he was saying. Layla still did not understand what was going on. She asked her brother why he was mentioning weapons. He felt his sister was truly naive and explained to her that those two got married because of the current power-sharing issue. Currently, Grand Duke Lingtuan is eyeing the Emperor's throne, and a faction of the nobility is loyal to His Highness. At present, they are divided into two factions. If the Grand Duke gains control of the weapons, he will become a threat to the royal family. The current representative of the royal faction is Duke Ruthwick, who had to establish a bond to prevent Count Rahab from colluding with Duke Lingtuan. Layla was irritated by her brother's roundabout way of speaking, still not understanding why political power had anything to do with those two's marriage. Her brother smiled at her and said that the fun had just begun, because it seems that Countess Rahab is not yet bound by anything here. Once, he visited Countess Rahab's mansion. He heard sounds of beatings and curses coming from a room that surprised him. At that time, Count Rahab was mercilessly beating his daughter Edith. Edith cried and pitifully apologized to her father. The Count wanted her to steal the construction documents of the Marquis, but she could not do it. He wondered to himself if Edith's bad reputation was merely a rumor created by her inhumane father. Layla felt confused by her brother's story. Her brother also found it hard to believe and told her that he had witnessed it with his own eyes. He advised his sister to stay calm and wait for the next developments because the information they had, if released at the right time, could spell the downfall of the Rahab family. The hallways sparkled with sunlight streaming in. Two people walking down that hallway were Edith and Rainer. Rainer was showing her the location of the dining room. She nodded in agreement. It took an entire week to explore the house. She asked Rainer what she should do next now that she had learned everything. Rainer looked at her coldly. "You do not need to do anything, I will send everything to you." To surprise you, he felt that starting today you could be assigned work. Hearing this, she felt extremely surprised and joyful. Seeing her so happy, Rainer did not understand what she was thinking. In reality, she was thinking that she had grown tired of just eating and sleeping for a while. She went with him and asked if the place where her mother-in-law was staying was nearby, and she clarified the exact location. She smiled and told him that thanks to him she remembered all the locations. She happily thanked him and praised him for being a dedicated person. Hearing this made him freeze for a moment in surprise. He quickly pushed up his glasses to hide his embarrassed expression. He said that he had taken her on a tour, and it is strange that she had forgotten. In her mother-in-law's study, Zither was there and quickly greeted her formally. She was also surprised by Zither's appearance and quickly greeted her back. She stepped forward and took Zither's hand, expressing her happiness at working together and hoping to learn many things from her. Zither politely said that she was not sure if she had enough expertise to teach Edith. Zither's face reddened with embarrassment. Suddenly, her mother-in-law laughed cheerfully and said that the two seemed close. Only then did she realize her mother-in-law was sitting there, and she quickly apologized to her. Her mother-in-law laughed and said it was fine, assigning Zither to guide Edith through the documents she was organizing. The two sat at the table, seriously organizing the papers neatly. Suddenly, her mother-in-law stood up and said it was probably time. Edith asked who her mother-in-law was waiting for. Zither was surprised that she did not know and explained it to her. Her mother-in-law had an appointment with a royal designer, which surprised her, because this was also a scene in the Rule. In that scene, it seemed like there was a conflict between Edith and Zither. At that moment, there was an announcement from the servant. The designer had arrived. At that time, according to the Rule, when seeing the dress Edith chose, Zizi's dress received more attention. She reassured herself to stay calm because this was just one of many situations she would encounter later. It was too obvious that Zither, being by her mother-in-law's side for so long, of course, understood her dressing style better. She had nothing to win against Zither. She felt helpless in choosing clothes for her mother-in-law because she had only ever seen them in novels and did not have much knowledge. At that moment, Zither asked her mother-in-law what she thought of the outfit she had chosen. Edith praised the dress Zither had chosen and said it was hard to find a comparable design. However, she also proposed a rather unique design for her mother. Upon seeing the dress she had chosen, her mother-in-law was so surprised she exclaimed. Her mother-in-law found it hard to decide because both designs were beautiful. She also wanted Edith to choose a dress for herself, but she only wanted to have her dresses altered. The designer agreed to alter her dresses. She asked how Edith wanted the alterations done. Edith called Anna to bring her dresses and asked her to raise the chest area and avoid making it too tight. She placed her online orders and wanted the designer to remove all the excessive decorations. The designer said that her fashion taste seemed to have changed a lot from before. She smiled happily at the compliment. As the clothes were being altered, her mother-in-law and Zither were both very surprised. She stretched her chest because she had finally finished altering everything. She thought to herself, wondering how much money she could make by selling all the jewelry attached to those dresses. She had worked hard to get closer to the Duchess, and it seemed everything was going smoothly. Suddenly, she noticed Killian standing across from her in front of her room's door. She wondered why he was standing in front of her room and looking at her with such angry eyes. But before she could ask more, he stepped forward and wanted her to follow him. Seeing her still standing there, he told her that Zither invited her for tea. She felt uncertain because this part had not happened in the rule, but she had to go see what was happening anyway. She and Killian walked one behind the other down the long corridor. As she walked, she thought to herself that perhaps he had been sent by Zither to bring her. She noticed that even from behind, he was still very handsome, with broad and strong shoulders. He was a captivating man. Suddenly, he turned around, startling her, making her freeze. She felt embarrassed and feared that he knew she was looking at him, causing her to blush with shame. Suddenly, he warned her, making her frightened, as she had only looked at him for a moment and already got a warning. But he said that she should watch her words and speak properly in front of Zither, which confused her. He continued, "Zither is a member of his family, and she is much more important than you." She was not surprised by this, but she still felt disappointed. She asked him why he had to say those things. Was it to hurt her? She was still a person after all. He looked at her coldly and said he thought she was a venomous snake, not a person. She suddenly glared at him and said, "Speak like an educated person, Killian. Do you think Zither would like you and treat you like that? You are still the son of a nobleman." And she knew that he wanted to ruin her mood today, to make her look worse in everyone's eyes. But fortunately, she was not someone easily shaken. She continued, "You can try to hurt me, and let us see what happens to you," with eyes as cold as looking at an enemy. The tense atmosphere dissipated when she lifted her dress and walked away, leaving him there. When she reached the table where Zither and Clip were, they greeted her cheerfully as she appeared. The atmosphere was cheerful, but also a bit awkward. Zither was cheerful, while Edith was awkward. Suddenly, Clip remarked that it seemed Edith was adjusting very well here. He asked her if it seemed like she was working too hard because typically, a newlywed couple would be traveling together. Edith awkwardly laughed and said she did not know because it seemed like her husband was very busy. She knew very well that he intended to stay home with Zither. Killian asked Clip about the inventory he had to take after the winter. Clip nodded in agreement. Clip asked Zither if she wanted to go with him since she had long wanted to see what this work was like. Zither shyly asked again to be sure. Killian stepped in to relieve her, saying she did not need to pay attention to that, and surely Clip was putting her in an awkward situation again. Clip sarcastically said that if he were not home, Zither would be in even more trouble because of Killian. Edith felt that when the three of them were together, they still acted the part of close siblings, but the moment Clip was removed from the scene, Zither and Killian immediately seemed like a couple. But one could not blame Zither, since she was the female lead. Clip quietly drank his tea and waited for someone to speak up. Suddenly, his gaze shifted across the table, and he asked what she thought of Edith. Hearing herself mentioned startled her. She asked him what he was referring to. He replied that if he were the only one away, the ones left behind would be Zither, Killian, and her. Scene transition. Edith chose an unusual slit dress for her mother-in-law. The designer praised this dress as very tasteful because few people appreciated it due to its unusual color. She felt her vision was only focused on people from the 21st century, even though the designer might be pleased with it. But it would surely be criticized by her mother-in-law. As expected, her mother-in-law did not like it because, to her, it was a bit too elaborate. She felt annoyed by her mother-in-law's thinking, unlike her own. Older women should dress elaborately to enhance their beauty, she thought. Suddenly, her mother-in-law said she felt perfect in this dress and was embarrassed by the compliments. She chose both dresses. She asked if Zither liked any of the dresses or anything else. Zither waved her hand and shook her head, indicating she did not need anything. She politely declined, saying she already had enough. The Duchess kindly told Edith that the spring dress would suit Zither well for spring tea parties. Edith thought the rose pattern was usually very picky about the wearer, but it suited Zither because of her fair skin and rosy cheeks. Her mother-in-law complimented her good taste and asked her what she thought of the next white dress, making Zither stammer in response. The two of them enthusiastically discussed Zither's upcoming outfits, while Zither looked helpless. The designer diligently took notes on their conversation. After discussing all morning, Zither ended up with 5 outfits. Edith found it overwhelming to choose, while her mother-in-law thought it was not enough. Back to reality, facing Clip, he asked what she thought about only 3 people being at home. That would be Zither, Killian, and herself. She was confused, unsure how to answer the question, but also found him very strange. Although he knew she was not on good terms with Killian, he had no right to make her the butt of his joke. Her face became tense and annoyed. Meanwhile, he looked at her from head to toe, as if she were a lowly person. She thought that the Duke and Duchess had 2 sons who were both uneducated. How interesting. Lifting her teacup, she replied that she did not care much. Hearing this, Clip felt confused. She said he could do his duties as he pleased because she had no opinion on what he had to do or not. Clip explained that was not what he meant. She continued, saying that if he wanted to take Zither along, to be honest, it was too much. Because traveling long distances was very difficult and tiring, and Zither was not even his wife, so she did not entirely agree. She glanced at Zither and asked if he was pressuring her. At that moment, Zither placed her hand over her mouth as if deep in thought. But from her perspective, she saw Zither covering her mouth, smirking smugly. She was surprised by the female lead's expression. She wondered if she was mistaken in seeing Zither's expression like that. But when she looked again, Zither seemed normal and was carefully considering what had just been said. Zither asked Clip when he had to go for the inventory. At that moment, Edith was still staring at Zither, thinking about her previous expression, wondering if she had imagined it. But in this situation, she was not the one treating Zither unfairly, so there was no need to worry. Suddenly, Clip said that all this time, he was just joking and complimented his sister-in-law for being mature. He looked at her with a gaze full of malice. This was the arrogant male lead of the novel. Night fell, and the mansion sank into darkness. At this time, Killian was standing outside the hallway, gazing into the distance as if deep in thought. He was still reflecting on today's tea party.
I do not understand why Edith said that.
At that moment, when she received praise from the Clip, she said she was just trying to be more amiable with everyone, even now. Killian smiled and found it amusing. Suddenly, someone called his name, a familiar voice that startled him. Zither looked at him and asked why he was still alone on the rooftop at this hour. She wondered if something was going on with him. He smiled at her and replied that nothing was wrong. Killian asked her if his mother had bought her a new dress today because she liked to dress her up. She replied that it was true, but she felt sorry for Killian's wife. He thought there was no need to pity Edith because his mother loved daughters and treated them equally. Killian continued, saying he felt very happy to have Zither as a sister. Zither smiled happily when she heard those words. His mother had once said that since there were no daughters in the house, the 2 brothers were raised to behave like gentlemen. Zither said she wanted him to buy Edith a new dress because doing so would make her very happy. Hearing this made Killian confused. Zither said that this morning Edith could not choose any new dress for herself. She only mended her old clothes, helped Zither and her mother-in-law pick out new ones, which startled him. He was surprised that Edith only chose to mend clothes, as in his impression she was not like that. The Edith he knew would never wear the same dress twice. But what puzzled him more was whether, when choosing clothes for Zither, Edith would choose something revealing in her style. Zither refuted his statement. But he always doubted that Edith's sudden change in attire was out of jealousy over the white dress Zither wore at her wedding. If that were the case, he would not find it surprising because she was always jealous of Zither. He felt that Edith was so filthy that he no longer wanted to see her, especially when she was bathing. He remembered the sharp look in her eyes when she asked him why he wanted to hurt her. Suddenly, he felt so dizzy that he almost fainted. Seeing him in such pain made Zither curious, but she still asked him if he hated Edith. He looked at her and replied that Edith was like a snake demon to him. She appeared calm, but once they let their guard down, that snake would reveal its true nature. However, thinking about how Edith had changed her entire wardrobe made him feel satisfied with it. Because at least that way, the reputation of the Rutledge family would not be ruined by her anymore. Anna was reporting to Edith that her cosmetics, such as blush and perfume, had run out. Did she want to call the lady to buy more? She was curious when she heard this, as she had not used them since she crossed over. She was not sure whether to buy them or not because if she did, she would have to spend her own money. She also did not know how much money she had at the moment. Because she was living frugally, she had the designer remove the jewelry from her dress even though she had not paid them yet. But as a noblewoman, it was only natural for her to buy luxuries like cosmetics and perfume. Thinking back, she realized she should not have been so frugal like in her past life. In her past life, she was not cared for or loved by anyone, so she always had to avoid those around her. But now she had changed. She decided that she would trade with the merchant to buy perfume for herself. She told this to Anna, and it was quickly fulfilled. Beautiful, colorful bottles of perfume were displayed on the table. But she felt very uneasy because what she was hearing was driving her crazy. Before that, the merchant had told her that the perfumes were extracted from the finest rose petals. Hearing this made her excited, as she was about to use them. And they were favored by noble ladies. The merchant continued, saying the perfume's main scent was rose, along with raspberry and ambergris. But besides that, he could create a different scent if she wanted. He asked what kind of scent she preferred. She asked about the value of the perfume he had just described. The merchant said that for a bottle of that size, it would cost about 90,000. Hearing this, she was so frightened that her face turned pale because the price was too high. This bottle of perfume was twice the cost of her monthly food in her previous life. She felt very anxious about its price and did not want to buy it. Anna, seeing her reaction, asked the merchant what the other perfume's prices were. The merchant described that the most used rose perfume was Titania. It was the best-selling perfume. However, its scent was quite mature. She remembered that whenever she went shopping, this merchant seemed to be upselling and pressuring her. Meanwhile, the merchant was describing a few more types of perfumes. But she felt everything he described was being calculated in money. She felt dizzy with the price and did not want to listen any further. She awkwardly scratched her hand and said that maybe she would continue using her old perfume because she did not want to change the scent. But in reality, it was because she had no money. Anna asked her if she wanted to try mixing Nathaniel and RC together, which startled her. Anna explained that her old scent was wonderful, but now that she was married, she should use a more luxurious fragrance. The merchant thought it was a good idea and quoted her a price of 130,000, which left her feeling stunned. She decided to try negotiating down to 120,000 with the merchant. The merchant felt her request was too unreasonable because if that were the case, he would have to eat dirt. Anna was also surprised by her bargaining. But not giving up, she continued to haggle for 125,000 for the perfume, making the merchant feel awkward. She explained that she did not want others to think she was being extravagant right after getting married, and she would get back to him after finishing the current bottle of perfume. The merchant, feeling embarrassed, remarked that she was a thrifty bride, and the Duke shyly agreed to her price. She was happy that she finally managed to get a deal. The merchant said he would deliver it once the perfume was ready. She also felt awkward, not knowing if bargaining was appropriate in this world. Meanwhile, Anna excused herself to reorganize her cosmetic shelf. She bought herself a bottle of perfume, a bit of blush, and a brush. But the perfume cost 125,000. She felt this was a huge waste of money, bringing her to tears. She regretted not buying something she truly liked, which made her feel disappointed. She felt uncomfortable using money that did not belong to her. And her current conflict was that she had a lot of money, but did not dare to use it. But in her previous life, she had always longed for a comfortable life because her brother used to take her money for gambling. She still had not adjusted to her current life. She decided from now on to enjoy such luxuries without having to save anymore. In this new identity, she would experience the joys that money could not entirely buy. At this moment, she suddenly remembered a place. She said goodbye to Anna to go tour the Sistine Hall. The hall was incredibly magnificent and vast, leaving her overwhelmed upon entering. She felt as though she had stepped into an art museum. She thought those expensive perfumes were nothing compared to the real luxuries in this room. Coming here, she felt satisfied by the diverse, unique, and special things. She joyfully enjoyed the moment as she gazed at the artworks displayed here. The painting on the wall resembled a work by Monet in the 21st century. The colors, the perspective, everything was unexpectedly perfect. She could not believe she had the chance to view it up close, like this. Approaching a large painting hung on the wall, it depicted a knight riding into battle. She felt its grandeur was so overwhelming it took her breath away. After finishing her tour, she sat down on the floor and gazed at the paintings on the walls. Suddenly, a voice rang out. It said that she was marveling at the artworks here, finding them strange, which startled her. Killian approached her with a haughty expression, looking down at her from above. Seeing him, she unexpectedly asked what he was doing here. He replied nonchalantly that he was strolling around his own house. What is so strange about that? She felt embarrassed because it made too much sense, so she did not know what to say next. Killian said that he thought no one in the Rahab family appreciated art, but he was surprised that one person did, while she felt he was deliberately provoking her. Edith admitted that Killian was right because she felt overwhelmed when looking at this work. Edith wondered how a painting could evoke so many emotions. Edith told Killian that this work clearly depicted the tragedy and brutality of war, as well as the determination to end that tragedy on the face of the person sitting on the horse. But on that same face, she did not see any joy in victory, and she thought perhaps war could never bring anyone happiness, no matter how great the victory. Hearing those words left him stunned. Killian then explained to her that this piece was painted to honor his grandfather, who led the war against another kingdom, and to celebrate his victory. It was at this moment that Edith realized, so that is the original model of this god of war. You really did not know? No, not at all. She replied, honestly. I have never heard that you enjoy art either. Why are you here? Hearing that, Edith sighed and replied, as people grow older, their interests change. Killian then asked her if she had any favorite artists. Hearing that, Edith replied, unfortunately, I have only just started liking paintings recently, so I have not delved deeply into any artists. Naturally, because she did not know anyone in this world. Edith wanted to keep her distance from Killian, so she replied, yes, and I do not think it has anything to do with you, or the Rutwick family, right? Hearing that, he suddenly froze. Moving on to another painting, she was surprised again. She told him that there was a boy here, which startled and alarmed him. Because in that painting it was actually him. He awkwardly explained that when he was young, his grandfather had asked him to be a model for the painting. His awkwardness amused her. She kept staring at that painting, which made him feel embarrassed and not want her to look at it anymore, but she said it did not have anything to do with him. She wanted to go somewhere else, but suddenly she remarked that it really looked quite small. He stared at her in surprise, still not comprehending what she had just said. After understanding her meaning, he blushed awkwardly and shouted loudly that he was just modeling the face, that body was not his. It turned out she teased about how small Killian was, making him very angry. She walked away, not trusting him. He said, how could a dignified young master, a duke's son, be naked in front of a painter? But her still skeptical expression made him even angrier. He turned his back and walked away, saying that he could not talk to her. She smiled with the demeanor of a victor. She told him that if she did not joke around, her life would be unbearably boring, but by then, he had already left. She stood alone in the room, feeling bored. But then she thought perhaps his would be much larger than in the painting, so she turned back to look at it again. In the lush green garden of the Duke's mansion, she was strolling in a beautiful, comfortable dress because the weather was lovely. She wished she could live like this forever. It would be wonderful. In the 2 months since she crossed over, she had never thought that noble life could be this luxurious. She walked lightly under the bright, warm sunshine. She felt happy living here, with sun, wind, and fresh air. Days like this were truly wonderful. She had adapted to this place. She could visit an art exhibition hall anytime, along with countless high-end cosmetics at her disposal and a safe dining table filled with gourmet food to enjoy daily. Although envious glances followed her, she was lucky to have a close maid, Anna. She was very kind. While she was thinking, suddenly she saw a figure approaching, surprising her. She greeted Rainer because it had been a long time since she had seen him. He quickly saw her and asked how she could be here. She said she was taking a walk because lately she often came to the garden in the morning to enjoy the fresh air. She mentioned that she often went out and visited museums. She thanked him for taking her to such wonderful places. He thanked her for the compliment. Suddenly she asked, have you eaten? She said, the air is so refreshing today, is not it? He looked at her, not knowing how to respond because he had not caught up with the conversation yet. She kept looking at him expectantly, waiting for his answer. He adjusted his glasses and said he had nothing to say to her. This left a big question mark in her mind. Knowing he was busy with countless tasks, she quickly said goodbye to let him get back to work and promised to meet again later. He watched her retreating figure with a puzzled expression. But then he thought that perhaps everything, including her, would gradually change over time. She decided that for now, she should go to today's Tirainer ground. Today's Tirainer ground was where the knights of the mansion were practicing sword fighting together. Killian and another person were enthusiastically sparring with each other. She noticed her husband still looked as cool as ever. Seeing those bulging muscles made her swallow involuntarily. She thought her husband was truly someone she never got tired of admiring, always handsome with defined muscles and broad shoulders. Although his personality was quite annoying, she could not deny his handsomeness. In her personal opinion, she preferred Killian over Cliff. Her husband had a full, well-toned body, with defined muscles, his skin taut and smooth. Cliff was also appealing, but he was thinner than her taste. Watching the two of them sparring made her feel extremely excited. She felt happy as she looked towards her husband. Killian, with a smiling face, was sparring with his brother. But suddenly, she widened her eyes in surprise, looking at the opposite side. Killian was happily waving and calling Zither excitedly. She felt a bit disheartened, knowing that smiling face would never be for her. She had lived 28 years, but never had she felt as embarrassed as she did now. So embarrassed that she could not focus on her work just because of a handsome man. She decided to calm down and focus on her work, pushing him out of her mind. In her hand was a document about orders for weapons and armor from the Ruthwick family. It seemed this document was quite important. She thought that she had finally gained the trust of the family, which was why they entrusted her with such an important thing. But suddenly, she heard footsteps approaching, and it turned out to be Zither standing next to her, asking what she was doing. She explained that she was organizing the documents her mother-in-law had given her. Zither was surprised, not understanding what the word document meant. She realized that perhaps this world did not have such a noun as document. She thought perhaps the author had set the story hundreds of years ago, as documents only appeared in her time, and these counterfeit papers were completely different from the Excel format. She handed the document in her hand to Zither and asked if it made more sense to him. Suddenly, Zither displayed a cold demeanor she had never seen before, telling her that if she showed it to others, it would be very strange. The Duchess looked over and asked what the two of them were doing, only seeing Edith's sad expression. Zither told the Duchess that Edith had shown her something very confusing, which left Edith shocked by Zither's reaction. The Duchess complimented Zither on being so good at helping her sister-in-law with her work. However, it was clearly she who was showing Zither how to organize the documents to make them more understandable. At this moment, she suddenly remembered the days when she started her company in her previous life, where colleagues often competed for CR Edith with her and overshadowed her brilliance. Thinking of this, she felt powerless and angry when the main character of this storyline became so complacent. Thinking of this, she asked her mother-in-law if it was bothersome for her to ask for advice on the documents she was working on. Her mother-in-law was quite surprised by the word documents. She explained to her mother-in-law that because there was so much information, she summarized it into a table, dividing it into corresponding sections, and only noting the main points, with quantities and listed prices in each column. Seeing the two of them so cheerful made Zither feel extremely puzzled, as if being pushed away. Meanwhile, she continued explaining to her mother-in-law about the documents she was working on, but suddenly realized that she was stealing the spotlight from the main character. And, at that moment, the main character was quietly standing in a corner where no one noticed. She quickly corrected herself, saying that the reason she could complete this was because Zither had helped her a lot. But suddenly, she heard a sigh from her mother-in-law. She said she really liked the way she presented things. She felt embarrassed by her mother-in-law's praise as this was the first time she had received such a compliment. Her mother-in-law smiled and told her that her work was excellent and that she would follow her method from now on. She wanted her to revise other documents like the one she had just submitted so that others could follow and learn from it. She happily agreed, as this was the first time she had been acknowledged in such a way. At this moment, her husband, Killian, was holding the document his mother had given him. He wondered if all of this had been solely created by Edith. His mother happily confirmed that the information was accurate. She continuously praised Edith for being very smart, while behind them, Zither had a sad expression. Killian acknowledged that upon reviewing it, the set of documents was very efficient and easy to extract information from. Suddenly, his mother mentioned that he and Edith had to get married for political reasons. She was sad, saying that she had to leave her family and come to a foreign place. His mother took his hand and continued. She hoped that he would sympathize with Edith a little to make her feel more comfortable. But upon hearing this, he felt extremely uncomfortable and did not want to comply. Suddenly, the sound of a door opening echoed. Rainer walked in, holding a document. He apologized for not knowing that the Duchess was here and excused himself to leave so they could finish their conversation. But the Duchess quickly called him back, wanting him to stay and talk, as she had finished saying everything. She wanted to show John the new document. She explained to Rainer about the document Edith had submitted to her that morning from Killian's perspective. Suddenly, Killian called Zither, who was organizing documents, and looked over in surprise. He walked over and asked Zither's opinion about these documents, asking what she thought of them. Zither shyly said that everything his wife did was very good. She added that Edith had learned a lot, but her face looked sad. She sorrowfully told him that she felt inadequate for not learning anything, and that his wife had absorbed everything faster than she could. He found what she said to be very strange. Zither had always helped his mother with work, as she had been mentored by both his mother and father for 4 years. Zither was so confident that he felt jealous. But now Zither was praising Edith for being very intelligent, which meant Edith was indeed very well educated. Even when he met Edith at the Sistine Hall, everything was different from the rumors. The afternoon at the mansion. Suddenly, Killian came looking for her today. She was extremely surprised when she opened the door and found him there. He stood at the door, looking at her with an arrogant and cold expression. But that did not affect her mood because he was so handsome. She asked him why he had come here. She playfully teased, asking if he came because he missed her. He walked past her and said that he did not believe her words because he knew she always wanted to drive him away from this place. She told him that if she wanted him to stay longer, would he agree? He mocked her, saying that she never missed an opportunity and should learn to give up. Because she was something filthy in his heart. But for her, every time she met him, she always wanted to tease him. She only hoped he would not kill her. Staying here longer did not matter to her. She did not understand why he had come here. She wondered if it had something to do with the Rahab family, or if he came because he knew she had been watching him during the fencing match. If it was not for any of those reasons, perhaps he was dissatisfied with what happened yesterday with Zizi, and now came to question her. She decided to calm him down before he could scold her. She changed the subject, commenting on how nice the weather was today. She continued, saying that it was still early, but already a bit chilly. Killian stared at her with a confused expression. She kept gazing out the door, as if she genuinely wanted to say that the weather was really beautiful today. But it made him feel angry and irritated. Killian reached out and slammed the door shut, blocking her view. He stood behind her with a gloomy expression, while she was extremely frightened by his action. She panicked when she realized she was blushing with embarrassment. The distance between them was now too close. He told her that his mother's fashion was far too luxurious and noble for someone as lowly as her to wear. She did not understand what he was saying and felt extremely surprised. He continued speaking in her astonishment, saying that she had long been known as someone who never wore the same dress twice. So, why did not she have a new dress made that day? Was it because it did not suit her revealing style? But that was not true because that day, she did not buy a new dress simply because she wanted to change it herself. He continued speaking in her frustration. If she wanted something, she should just tell him directly. He would order it for her. Edith angrily turned to look at him.
Killian, you truly know nothing about me.
And she made it clear to him that if she lacked something, she would naturally know to call the tailor, without needing to rely on him. She looked at him angrily, as if affirming, saying that he was just finding an excuse to hate her. And to him, everything bad was caused by her, and everything was her fault, while she just wanted to be closer to everyone. Her words left Killian feeling shocked. She continued speaking since the wedding had taken place. He always looked at her with a condescending expression, and he blamed her for everything, just to satisfy his own ego. He always wanted her to be the one at fault. He was utterly surprised by her words and had not yet reacted. Meanwhile, she continued saying that he always saw himself as the victim because he was nothing more than a coward. Hearing this left him feeling frozen. But at this moment, he reacted, smiling as if there was no fault. He said she had no awareness of her current position and had no right to shout at him and the Ruthwick family like that. Meanwhile, she asked him who was the one threatening others here. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Very well." He asked her if she was sure she had nothing more to do with the Rahab family. At this moment, she fully realized that to everyone here, she was just an outsider. She helplessly slumped at his words, truly disheartened, as darkness covered her face. She called his name in a cold tone. This attitude made him open his eyes wide in surprise. She smiled and looked at him, saying that he truly knew nothing about her, not even a little. Killian felt uncomfortable because everything was beyond his control. He turned away and said that he had heard she had helped his mother a lot and advised her not to sow more doubt among them. He left, leaving her alone in the room. She sat down on the floor with a look of despair and exhaustion. She felt it was always like this. She was utterly tired. She no longer wanted to stay in this place because she lacked the strength and resilience to remain here. She would find every way to escape from here. After leaving the room, Killian also felt exhausted. He did not understand what he had just done at that moment. When he saw her, he smelled the overwhelming scent of roses throughout the room. At that time, he did not even know how he was reacting. He did not understand why he had to endure it like that. At that moment, she looked at him and said that he truly knew nothing about her. But he thought that he certainly had not said anything too harsh. Because from the beginning, he only saw her as the daughter of Count Rahab. Yet now she was saying all sorts of nonsense, knowing nothing at all. But clearly, everything he said was information that everyone knew. Thinking of this gave him a pounding headache. Suddenly, someone called his name, making him turn around. Zither was hugging a book tightly and wished him a good day. She smiled kindly, like an angel standing there. But at that moment, noticing his unusual state, she stopped and looked at him with a puzzled expression. She approached him and asked why his face looked so pale. But when Zither placed her hand on his forehead, he smelled the delicate fragrance of lily of the valley flowers. A fresh, pure scent of white flowers, like wildflowers in the meadow. Zither, after touching his forehead and then her own, said he clearly did not have a fever. He smiled and reassured her that he was fine and thought that the overwhelming smell of roses was truly disgusting. He put his arm around her shoulder and told her that he had encountered a disgusting woman earlier that morning, which was why he had a headache. Zither questioned him as to why he would say such things about his wife. But to him, Edith was just a pawn planted by Countess Rahab, so he did not think much of it. He asked Zither if she had eaten yet. Anna approached and asked if Edith had called for her and had any instructions. Edith stood outside the door, looking out to the yard. She asked Anna if she wanted to go outside and play. In her previous life, whenever she felt sad, she would drink a cup of Americano and go for a walk. Now she wanted to do the same. Anna quickly complied and prepared things for her to go outside. She thanked Anna, and Anna felt happier. Being trapped in such a large mansion only made her feel more suffocated. Since she was born, she had rarely gone outside. She thought that if she went out, she would feel better than staying at home. Anna asked her where she wanted to go. She honestly did not know where to go. She quickly turned the matter over to Anna as a question and said that she had never gone to the city center by herself. Anna said that where they go would depend on what she wanted to do first. If you want to buy clothes, accessories, or try some other dishes, Biamaji is the right place. For cultural works, exhibitions like theaters, displays, and banks, they are concentrated on Darrett Street. And there you can also find the most popular candies in the capital, sold right here. These items are always hard to buy and frequently sell out. Upon hearing this, Edith felt like she wanted to shop for some jewelry and asked Anna about a place to buy. Anna said that Kinderly is the oldest jewelry brand here. Datria just opened recently, or Ropican as well, but it is quite far from the center. Edith felt that Anna was like an encyclopedia. The author used Anna as a character to convey and explain everything in the plot. Edith called Anna and said she wanted to go to the Darrett store to sell some jewelry pieces she had removed from old dresses. After the two went to the store and sold all the jewelry, she left holding a considerable sum of money. She was surprised by how much money she got from selling the jewelry. Although the diamonds were small, they were the most valuable of all the items she sold. Anna found her confusion hard to understand because these things were obvious. She asked Anna about the nearest bank and learned that there were several major banks around. After depositing the money into the bank, she felt extremely happy and relieved because today's trip had come to an end. Initially, she felt anxious because she did not know how modern banks operated. But fortunately, she could successfully open a bank account without many obstacles because this world had not yet established the concept of identity, so there was no issue. With savings in hand, she felt much more at ease. She did not know when she might be kicked out of the house. She quickly thanked Anna and told her that she had some matters to attend to, so the day was not over yet. The two of them went to a nearby restaurant by the bank. She felt satisfied with the money she had and the meal today. She asked Anna about the means of transportation here so that she could travel someday after leaving this place. Anna said that people here typically traveled by horse-drawn carriage, but they could also go by train, and she usually returned to her hometown by train. Anna mentioned that train tickets were quite expensive. Moreover, it was very crowded and bustling. The station nearest to where she was sitting was located in the southern part of the capital. The fare for regular seats was 3,000, and for first class it was 7,000, depending on the interior. Edith had many more questions to ask Anna, but she hesitated because of her background as a servant girl and was concerned that Anna would report everything about her trip to the Ruthwick family. However, for now, this information was enough to satisfy her. Suddenly, Anna asked her if she needed anything else. She smiled and said that thanks to Anna, today's trip had gone smoothly. She thanked her for her help. Sitting in the Ruthwick family's library, she studied the difference between new beans and old beans. She wanted to gather more information to survive outside. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps and the door opening startled her. Anna entered and informed her that her mother-in-law was looking for her because the jeweler had arrived. She wondered what day it was in the story for the jeweler to come. She suddenly remembered that today was the day Edith was humiliated in the original work. The jeweler was someone who frequently visited the Duke's residence. This was also Edith's first official conflict in her married life. As usual, everyone gathered around Zither to choose the most beautiful jewelry for her. Because the female lead always acted as though she did not need anything, her purity made everyone want to compensate for it. But ironically, the female lead's attention was drawn to Edith, who was sitting alone across from her. Edith remained silent and seated because no one paid attention to her. Zither noticed this and decided to choose a necklace for Edith. She said the red necklace looked very suitable for Edith. Edith felt that the necklace did not suit her at all. Edith asked the female lead if it was because she did not like it that she passed it on to Edith. Edith remarked that the female lead looked down on her, which made the female lead very flustered in her explanation. Like most antagonists, Edith acted arrogantly and then had the jeweler take everything except the necklace the female lead had chosen. Immediately, the male lead stepped in and bought all the jewelry for the female lead, leaving only the necklace Zither had chosen for Edith. During the jewelry selection, the Duchess commented that the green color of the necklace matched Zither's eyes very well. Just like in the original story, Edith sat quietly in a corner, ignored by everyone. The Duchess said she would give her the cream-colored necklace and the diamond-studded necklace as well. Normally, Edith would join them in suggesting options for Zither. But today, she did not want to be there because she hated facing her husband. Looking at everyone eagerly picking jewelry for the female lead, she thought about today's events in the original story. She also felt a little bitter because she was always the one left behind. Looking at the sparkling jewelry, she only thought about how much it was worth. She saw jewelry as pure money. Suddenly, Zither spoke up, asking everyone to wait. She suddenly called out Edith's name, as if she had just noticed Edith sitting quietly the whole time. She said that she thought the necklace would look beautiful on Edith. Edith was surprised that the scene had finally arrived. The necklace with its shimmering red pendant looked so delicate, yet luxurious. Looking at the sparkling pendant, she asked the jeweler if it was a ruby. The jeweler quickly complimented her for having a good eye and said that it was a very high-quality ruby and the chain was made of gold and crafted by the best artisans. Her mother-in-law called her to try it on. She reached out to take the necklace, but her husband quickly took it. This surprised her greatly because her husband had always hesitated and did not want to touch her. He took the necklace and opened it as if he intended to put it on her. He told her to turn around, and he would help her wear it. She was surprised by his action and did not understand why he was behaving like this. Today, he was helping her put on the necklace. She suddenly realized that it was probably because there were many people around, so he acted that way. His mother was also sitting there, and surely he did not want to upset her. After putting it on, she smiled at him and asked how she looked. Killian blushed awkwardly at her beauty. But to cover his embarrassment, he quickly turned his face away and said it was fine. After seeing her wearing the necklace, he wanted to tell the jeweler that he would pay for it. This was the first gift Killian gave to his wife. Cliff complimented him for being a wonderful husband, saying that the rest would be for Zither. The Duchess quickly intervened, not wanting her son to take everything, as Edith should still have a choice too. She told her mother that she did not need anything else. Meanwhile, Zither was panicking, wondering if everything was going to be for her. Edith smiled and told her mother-in-law that a necklace was enough for her. In truth, she was thinking about how much this set of jewelry could sell for if she owned it, rather than actually liking it. Suddenly, she blushed when she remembered the necklace her husband had just given her. She touched it and thought that perhaps this necklace could not be sold. At this moment, Edith was holding a letter in her hand, a letter from her father. Reading the letter made Edith angry. After all the mistreatment in the past, why would he invite her back? Edith in the original story was always loyal to that family. He was also the one who made Edith spread bad rumors about Zither. But suddenly, she saw some letters placed on the furnace. These letters were all written by Count Rahab, in other words, her father. In the letter, he told her not to forget her duty and her happiness. He also reminded her that once she had access to the documents, she should quickly send them back to him. In the letter, he said he would be waiting for her response. She wondered how her father knew she had been entrusted with organizing the documents when she had not told him. So surely there was another spy here besides her. This spy might directly oversee her actions and report back to him. Placing a blank sheet of paper on the desk, she thought about what to write in her reply. After thinking for a while, she began to write. She said that the Duke was more careful than she had imagined. Moreover, the Duke had not done anything wrong. The military matters were all controlled by His Majesty the Emperor. She asked why he hated the Duke so much. She said there was no reason for the Grand Duke to have the right to seize the Emperor's throne. Therefore, she hoped he would reconsider and abandon the idea of rebellion. Instead, she suggested it would be better if the two families formed an alliance and developed their territories. She felt pleased with the letter she had just written, thinking it was excellent. She had almost said everything that was on her mind. Although she might be killed for it, she felt satisfied. Even knowing he would not follow it, at least she had spoken. It was not something she needed to worry about anymore. She lay back on the couch, thinking everything was over, but in truth, things always took an unexpected turn. In the study, Duke Ruthwick asked why she only cared about her father's interests and those of the Rahab family. She sat across from him and firmly believed that she had not done that. Duke Ruthwick wanted her to swear by all the honor of Count Rahab on what she had said. She looked at him and swore by all her father's honor and her own life that she had not done that. Duke Ruthwick and the others looked at her with mocking eyes, asking whether what she had sworn was truly worth anything to her after everything she had done. Edith was still confused and asked him what he was talking about, which she did not understand. He called Rainer and handed him a stack of documents. Rainer brought the stack of documents in front of her and handed them to her. In the stack of documents in her hands, she saw that it was the set of documents that the Duke had entrusted to her. The Duke said that these had been compiled by Rainer and returned to her. He informed her that everything she was holding in her hands was false documents. What was even more coincidental was that her father somehow knew about the items listed in the books and had been fooled by him. Rainer remained silent and listened. Suddenly, she said, "Pardon me," which made Rainer turn to look at her in surprise. She said that she did not fully understand what the Duke was talking about and still did not understand what he was saying. She said she knew there was another reason why he had given her these false documents, but whatever it was, she still followed his orders. Looking at her reaction, the Duke believed she was very calm in this situation. He asked her how the information that only she knew could have ended up in Count Rahab's hands. She was surprised and confirmed again that the Duke had just said that only she knew this information. Was that true? Because besides her, there was also Rainer who had compiled it, and others in his office. Both the Duchess and Lady Zither had also seen it. The Duke did not accept her words and asked if she intended to blame the Ruthwick family. She realized that she was exactly like a principal that never changed because she was never considered a part of this family, even after marriage. But it was the Duke who forced her to marry that scoundrel. Suddenly, she spoke bitterly. "So what is Zither's last name? Is it Zither Ruthwick? Because clearly she is not part of this family either, but is still loved." The Duke glared angrily and told her to watch her words. She said that the Duchess was there and gave her this document, and Lady Zither also knew about it, and when this happened, she was the first to be accused. She said that if they never trusted her from the beginning, they should not pretend. And they also should not have entrusted her with paperwork duties in the first place. She looked at him calmly and said she could have blackmailed Count Rahab to take her home after stealing the document. Hearing this, everyone in the room widened their eyes in surprise. She felt really tired of trying to explain to people who did not believe her, because it was clear that she did nothing, so how did it get into her father's hands? And she was also a little disappointed to see Rainer, whom she thought she could trust, deceiving her, though she did not think he was a criminal, and even less suspected he was a spy. So, who exactly is the spy in this mansion? Someone capable of assessing such important documents here would not need her to be involved in this marriage at all. In principle, it was obvious that Edith's trick had swapped the document. Right after obtaining the document, she quickly copied it and gave it to Countess Rahab, but the information on it was completely fake, so the Ruthwick family suffered no losses. However, Edith was later discovered and placed under house arrest. Officially, she was no longer considered the daughter-in-law of the Ruthwick family.
Since that day until now,
Whatever she has done, the event remains unchanged. She is still the one assigned the villain role of Edith. Is that a sign that she can never change her fate according to the principle? She felt tired and sad when realizing the truth. She thought she would sink deeper into guilt, until, as per the principle, she would die at the hands of her husband. Killian suddenly noticed that she was crying, and he quickly turned to look. She sat there and cried sadly, with all these thoughts in her head, really not knowing what to do next. She comforted herself not to cry here and wiped her tears. She told the Duke again that she dared swear on her life that none of these things had anything to do with her. If she had done these things, the Duke could behead her right now. Hearing this, Killian was frightened, and he told his father that they should gather more information. Clip also doubted whether she was really the one who stole the document. But while gathering more information, they would ensure the suspects did not get exposed, which meant keeping her imprisoned. The Duke agreed with the suggestion, and she was officially put under house arrest during this time. He threatened her, saying she should pray to find the truth, or her life would be lost. She felt everything was happening too much like in a novel, even ending that way. Killian wanted to be the one supervising her instead of letting Raynor do it. He quickly stepped up and took her hand, pulling her outside. Everyone in the room found his reaction strange. As soon as they were outside, Killian shouted in her face, asking if she was crazy to say such things to the Duke, but she replied that she wished she could go crazy right now. He said the Duke was a man of the battlefield. He had the nickname of the Ruthless Executioner. She looked at him in amazement, seemingly unbothered. She said that was a great nickname. He said that she dared ask the Duke to behead her when she knew full well he would not hesitate to do it. At that moment, she asked him, "So what do you want to say now?" She told him that she had once said if she were guilty, they could execute her, but clearly, she was not the guilty one. He followed her and said that criminals must pay the price for their actions, but the truth would soon come to light. She looked at him sarcastically. What he said to her made no sense at all. She turned and walked away, continuing to say that since they did not believe her, and he did not believe her either, everyone always blamed her even though she was innocent. She suggested to him that if he had given her that fake document, he himself could be the one who leaked it. At that moment, he would become her accomplice, even worse than her, because she was only the one who arranged the document. But everything was not like that because in the investigation, only she was the one convicted and criticized by the public. Hearing what she said left him bewildered and doubting what he was hearing. He clenched his fists tightly. Killian said he would not be biased toward anyone in this investigation. She looked at him, surprised by his response. He promised her, with all his honor, that he would investigate it fairly. He promised her, with a determined face, that he would never let her suffer injustice. And as long as she was here, he would tell her everything happening outside. Hearing this, she pondered as if something was on her mind. Then she said she would not force him to do something he did not want to do. And, even more, he did not want you involved in this investigation. She looked at him with a sarcastic expression and said that if she and Zither were coincidentally accomplices, would he be sure to expose her? Hearing her words made him suddenly fall silent, unsure of what to say. The next morning, in the majestic and splendid royal palace, the knights stood there like statues. A carriage approached the palace, and Clip gently extended his hand to help his princess down from the carriage. Zither suddenly heard someone calling her name. Startled, she turned around. The princess was running towards her excitedly. She came before her, greeted her, and said that it had been a long time since they last met. Princess Catalina. She was like a wild creature in the heart of the capital, capable of doing whatever she pleased, feared by everyone. She was the only woman in the empire who dared to cut off her hair and never wore dresses. She only wore a military uniform, whether it was for daily life or any significant event. The empire's obsession. Even the emperor was powerless against this younger sister. But she was always gracious to Zither. Zither used formal language to greet her, but she quickly refused and wanted to be called by her name. Princess Catalina was only friendly to Zither because Zither had stolen her heart. Clip stepped in to ease the situation for his sister, so she would not feel awkward in front of the princess's actions. Then, everyone entered the royal palace. Suddenly, the princess asked why Killian was not present. Clip quickly responded that since Killian was married, he could not leave his wife at home. The princess remarked that it seemed the rumors were true. But Clip smiled and said that those two could hardly be called a couple. It was not just a marriage. It was a chain to bind the Rahab family. The princess cursed the names of those who attempted to rebel, questioning whether Clip had come here to report this to the emperor. According to the princess's memory, Edith had a rather alluring figure. The princess did not remember much about Edith because she did not care much for politics. A knight approached and said that His Majesty the Emperor was waiting for everyone inside. Clip teased the princess, saying it was surprising that a member of the royal family did not care about politics. If the emperor heard this, he would surely be shocked. The princess asked if he had come here to argue with her. Suddenly, the princess placed her hand on Zither's shoulder and pulled her into her embrace. The princess said that the situation in the empire was still relatively stable, so she decided to go out with Zither. She told Clip to go speak with the emperor. The two quickly bid each other farewell, as the princess said she would take Zither to see the horse she had just purchased. Clip found the princess truly an interesting person. Before leaving, Clip asked Killian if he had taken his wife to the right place. Killian showed impatience and said he had a headache. Clip asked Killian if he could go to the palace in such a mood. Killian suddenly became irritated and asked why he suddenly wanted to go there. The matter was not resolved yet, so why would he want to go there and report to the emperor? Killian grabbed Clip's shoulder and questioned him. Seeing Killian unwilling to go along, Clip decided to go with Rainer. Clip silently thought that this was the first time he had seen Killian react so strongly. Edith's memory returned to when she was a child, before she crossed into this world, crying on the bed in pain. Suddenly, a gentle voice behind her asked if she was in a lot of pain. It was her sister, who was beside her with cancer. She recognized her sister. Her sister stood at the foot of the bed, gazing at her intently. She shyly asked if she had woken her up. Her sister explained that she, too, often cried like her. Sitting down on the bed with her, her sister asked if she was afraid of dying. She replied that although she was very scared, she wished she could just die right now. Hearing this, her sister was shocked and seemed not to understand. She explained that when her parents found out she was sick, they wanted her brother to donate his marrow, but it seemed her brother did not want to do it. Her brother had said he did not want to because it would be painful. No matter what their parents did, he would not agree. And he had said that it would be better to just let her die. So now, she thought it would be great if she could die, so she would not trouble anyone. The sister beside her said that things were not going the way she wanted, so she was very sad, was not she? She said that she was envious of her, because at least there was someone compatible with her, while she did not have anyone. And she had said that she wanted to see her 20th birthday, and wished she could grow her hair long enough to tie it up, put on a bit of lipstick and powder. She wanted to walk down the street and see the world more, but perhaps that was not possible. At that moment, she stopped crying and looked closely at her sister, feeling that her sister's fate was truly pitiful. Her sister's hands were covered in devices and many needle marks. Suddenly, her tears fell because of the words her sister had spoken. Her sister had always been the one patiently comforting her whenever she felt down. She smiled and told her that if she ever had the chance, she would try to do everything she wanted. She woke up from her dream in tears. She woke up and remembered that her sister had said she was very afraid of dying. But when she entered the operating room, she left without saying goodbye. She did not want to give up on her own life like that. She reassured herself that as long as she could still breathe, she would be able to do everything she wanted.